There's a good fish. Whoa, there's a good fish. Oh, come here, girl. There. This is what we're here for. So underappreciated in a lot of places in the Midwest, especially in the Dakotas, but I tell you what, smallmouth bass are one of my favorite fish. And across the board, I talk to guys that are fishing out in the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, they're using tube jigs. Out here in the Dakotas and Minnesota, a lot of inland lakes, tube jigs are just a phenomenal bait for smallmouth bass. Now why? Out in the Great Lakes, they're imitating gobies. Out in these inland waters, a lot of these crayfish are the main forage for these smallmouth bass, and so tube jigs are very versatile. You can fish them deep, you can fish them below the boat, over structure, you can pitch them up and swim them back, you can scoot them across the bottom, short hops to mimic crayfish, but very effective. They look just like what smallmouth bass are eating, and just a lot of fun to fish. And we're going to explain some of the techniques for fishing tube jigs on today's show.
Jason Mitchell Elite Series Rods brings you the Daily Log Entry.
There's a fish. Whoa. Whoa. Cool stuff. Show off here. There, that's a beauty. Come here. There. All right. Now I tell you what, one thing I've often noticed about these smallmouths, just something to consider, is that there, that's a chunky fish there. A lot of times, some of my favorite days for fishing smallmouths, obviously when there's little wind, sun's out, a lot of times these fish will position right up on top of the rocks, shallow water. You can catch them with top waters. You can use a lot of different techniques, but obviously you can't choose the weather. But a lot of times you get wind, rain, clouds. A lot of times it seems like, at least from my experiences, when these fish are up on these rocks like this, is that they'll actually shift out a little bit and drop a little bit deeper. So a lot of times you have to fish a little slower and a little closer to the bottom, unless the fish are up on their beds, of course. But again, tube jigs are excellent for that because you can fish close to the bottom, no matter if you're in 10 feet of water, 15 feet of water, casting up into 5, and just work it back. And I've been just twitching it, popping it along the bottom, get it to scoot along the bottom like a crayfish, and they just pick it right up. You talk about fish moving up on spots with weather. A lot of times that's the exact opposite of what you'd expect from walleyes, and since you get these gray, overcast, windy days, the walleyes will push in, and move even shallower. But in case of smallmouths, I've often found where they've just pulled out a little bit. So different fish, different habits. When you look at a tube, it doesn't look like anything specific. It's just a Northland impulse tube, but you can make it look like just about anything by just how you fish it. And like all jigs, the versatility is what makes these baits shine. If you see fish busting the surface, for example, you could swim it and dart it, just underneath the surface. If you're marking fish on your electronics off the tip of a point in 20 feet of water, you can fish it down below the boat, but you can make it look like a lot of different things that fish eat by just what you do with the rod tip. What we're doing here is we're just casting up. There's a big rock bar here in front of us. We're casting up into maybe 5-6 feet of water. These fish are pulled out, pushed out just a touch, and most of the fish seem to be in maybe that 7 to 12 feet of water, and we're just hopping it down that break, making it look like a crayfish. A lot of times when we're on patterns to where these fish might be keying on gobies or crayfish, you might tend to use more browns, greens, orange and black, something that kind of mimics that. But again, white's a great tube color, especially if bass are going on shad here. But it's very versatile. And one thing that I like to do when I'm bumping bottom like this is use the heaviest jig weight that I can get away with without getting hung up. And A lot of times too, like you look in this tube here, get it off here, there's actually a rattle in there. But I like using tubes that are on the heavier side, and I love these rattles. Reason being is that smallmouth bass just love sound. And so whenever that jig hits the bottom, heavier jig, you just get a little bit more thunk out of it. And again, that rattle, you just get more noise. But I tell you what, in the past, we've had scuba divers videotape smallmouths for us to get underwater footage for our show. You know how they get the footage? They lay on the bottom of the lake and they bang two rocks together, the smallmouth bass come running. That's how important sound is for these fish. But I think, especially when you're fishing over a hard bottom, if you can get away with it without getting hung up, that heavier jig definitely gets hit more. Here's some fish. That is fun. I just love how they pick these up. That's an exciting way to catch fish. Look at there. I don't know if I can get any more fish out of that tube jig, but I'm gonna try. That is always good stuff. When you just feel that fish hit it, that is fun. I don't know how anybody cannot enjoy that. And obviously the fight is spectacular. We'll get this fish in the water, but that is so much fun. I really, really enjoy these fish. Fish. Whoa! Oh, 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 oh. Whoa! Oh, hang on. Oh, I love these fish. That's a beauty there. Boy, these girls do not want to quit. Look at that rod tip. They just do not want to quit. There. Show off this fish here. He's just a beautiful colored fish. But this is a lot of fun. And I tell you what, out on these lakes, we're on enemy swim here today, but within 20 miles of me, 30 miles of me here in the Glacial Lakes area of South Dakota, there's dozens of lakes that are producing phenomenal smallmouth bass fishing. Wabay's one, Roy Lake, Pickerel Lake, there's a lot of great bass fishing. And it's great to see because there's more and more guys that are experiencing this great fishing. There's more bass boats out here. You just see more people taking advantage of this resource. This is just great to see because we really do have some tremendous bass fishing around here. And it doesn't count unless people get out and enjoy it. So we'll get this fish back in the water.